23 years of marriage. And the truth hit me in the ugliest way possible. Not a confession, not a fight, not even a text message. No. It was a white stain on my wife's silk blouse glowing under the kitchen light like a neon sign screaming betrayal. I'm Jack Miller, 44 years old, suburban husband, mechanical engineer, the guy who fixes leaky faucets and pays the bills on time. But that night, staring at that blouse, I realized the leak in my marriage wasn't something I could tighten with a wrench. It had burst wide open. You don't expect your life to collapse at 11:47 on a Tuesday night while holding dirty laundry in your hands. But that's how it started. 23 years of loyalty erased by one piece of silk. And in that moment, I didn't know if I wanted to cry or burn the whole damn house down. My name is Jack Miller, 44 years old, born and raised in Massachusetts, and for most of my life I thought I was living the American dream. Suburban house with a white fence, a steady job as a mechanical engineer, a wife who wore power suits and a smile that made other men jealous, and a daughter off at college chasing her own future. From the outside, it looked perfect. Too perfect. My weekdays were predictable. Alarm at 6, coffee brewing by 6:15, rush hour traffic into the city, and the same cubicle at Hartwell Industries where I designed gears and pressure valves for machines most people never think about. I'd come home to a quiet street where neighbors waved from their porches and the smell of fresh-cut grass hung in the air. A picture postcard of stability. But the truth is, perfection is fragile. It doesn't take much to shatter the frame. And mine was already starting to crack. Laura Miller, my wife of 23 years. To the world, she was the definition of success. A corporate attorney with sharp green eyes and a wardrobe that looked ripped from a Manhattan runway. In court, she was fearless, slicing through opponents with words sharper than any blade. At charity galas, she sparkled, the kind of woman people admired, envied, even whispered about. At home, though, things were different. She floated through the house like a guest, always on her phone, always too tired, too busy, too distracted. The woman who once laughed at my dumb jokes and kissed me like she meant it, now brushed past me with a polite smile, a perfunctory peck on the cheek. Our conversations shrank to logistics, bills, schedules, our daughter's classes. Intimacy? That belonged to another lifetime. They say lawyers have the best poker faces. And Laura's? Flawless. Maybe too flawless. Because behind that mask I could feel something slipping away. It was late, a Tuesday night, almost midnight. The house was quiet. Laura upstairs, supposedly exhausted from another 3-day conference in Boston. I was alone in the kitchen, stacking the laundry basket when my hand stopped on something that didn't belong. A silk blouse, pale cream, expensive. Laura's. I lifted it toward the fluorescent light. That's when I saw it. An irregular white stain across the fabric, catching the glare like a spotlight. Not coffee, not wine, not anything I'd ever seen before. My gut twisted. 23 years of marriage, and I'd never seen a mark like that on Laura's clothes. Hell, we barely touched anymore, let alone left traces like this. My mouth went dry. I muttered, "Jesus Christ," and dropped the blouse back into the hamper like it was evidence at a crime scene, because that's exactly what it felt like. Evidence. And once you see evidence, you can't unsee it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Laura, staring at the ceiling while she breathed steady, calm, like nothing in the world could touch her. My mind, though, was a storm. Every creak of the floorboards above sounded like footsteps of guilt. Every buzz of her phone on the nightstand felt like a gunshot in the dark. I told myself maybe it was nothing. Maybe the stain was from dinner, or spilled detergent, or something innocent. But my gut wouldn't let me rest. 23 years together, and I knew my wife's rhythms. Something was off. Way off. At 2 in the morning, I got up, padded down to the kitchen, and cracked open a beer. The blouse sat in the hamper, silent, waiting. I couldn't stop staring at it, like it was mocking me. That was the moment doubt became suspicion. And suspicion, it doesn't go away, it grows. The next morning I tried to play it cool. Coffee was brewing, sunlight spilling across the kitchen table, and Laura floated in like she always did. Perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect lie. I slid the mug toward her and asked, casual as I could manage. "So, how was Boston?" She didn't flinch, didn't stutter, just took a sip of coffee and said, "Boring conference, terrible hotel food." Then she smiled that lawyer's smile, polished and practiced, the kind of smile that could win juries. But it didn't win me. I pressed again. Which client was it this time? Her green eyes flicked up at me, sharp, calculating. "The Patterson Group." "Why?" she asked, voice even, steady. I shrugged, forced a laugh. "Just curious. We don't talk much anymore." She softened for a second, placed her hand on mine, said, "You're right. Dinner this weekend. Just us." But guilt has a taste, and in that smile I tasted it. That evening, after Laura left for her so-called client dinner, I sat in the living room with the TV on mute, staring at her laptop on the desk. She guarded it like treasure, always shutting the lid, always logging out. But tonight, she'd been in a rush. The screen was dark, not locked. My pulse kicked like a hammer in my chest. I told myself this was wrong. Husbands aren't supposed to snoop. But then again, wives aren't supposed to come home with stains that don't belong. I opened the lid. The desktop flickered awake, too clean, too organized, almost too perfect. No open documents, no messy folders, just neat icons in rows. But down in the corner, the browser history betrayed her. I clicked. A quick scroll and my stomach dropped. Dating sites, not Facebook, not shopping, not news, but names I didn't recognize. Sites meant for people looking for more than business trips. My hands shook as I clicked on her email, only to hit a password wall. For a second, I almost gave up. Maybe this was the line I shouldn't cross. But then I thought about that blouse, about 23 years of loyalty, and the doubt twisting in my gut. I typed the first thing that came to mind. Our wedding date. 06/15/1999. The screen blinked once, and then, just like that, it opened. A door straight into hell. Her inbox looked spotless. Too spotless. Not a single personal message, not even junk mail. She'd scrubbed it clean, as if preparing for a trial. But people always miss something. I dug deeper, scrolling through hidden folders, browser caches, synced accounts. And that's when I saw it. An account tied to a name I didn't recognize. A profile on a site I'd never wanted to see. Discreet meet. For professionals seeking companionship. My wife's secret life, laid bare. I clicked the link, and the page loaded slow, like the computer itself knew it was about to break me. The profile photo came first. My stomach flipped. It was Laura, cropped just enough to hide the wedding ring, but I knew that face better than my own. Underneath the picture, her username, Sophisticated Lady 38. I scrolled through the bio, reading words I couldn't believe belonged to my wife. Successful attorney seeking intelligent conversation and passionate encounters. Discretion essential, no strings attached. Dozens of messages lined the inbox. Men of all ages, all desperate to meet the sophisticated lady. I couldn't breathe. Each message was another dagger, each compliment another betrayal. And then I noticed one conversation longer than all the others. A name. Doc Marcus. 6 months of messages, hotel bookings, fantasies written out in black and white. My hands shook so badly I could barely scroll. Because this wasn't suspicion anymore, this was proof. I forced myself to keep reading. The messages weren't vague, they weren't innocent. They were detailed, raw, filthy. Every word confirmation that the woman I'd called my wife was living a double life. Photos, too. Not nude, but close enough. A low-cut dress in a hotel mirror, her smile sharper than I'd seen in years. Promises of something special to wear, or not wear. My chest felt like it was caving in. And the dates, they lined up perfectly. Her business trips, her late nights at the office, the weekends she claimed were packed with client prep. All of it was right there in the thread with Marcus. Reservations at the Boston Marriott, presidential suite. The exact night she'd told me she was too exhausted to FaceTime. I printed everything, every message, every photo, every receipt. My office floor looked like a crime scene laid out in black and white. And my marriage? It was the victim. One name kept appearing in the messages, over and over. Marcus. His username was Doc Marcus. But he wasn't just some stranger online. His profile said it all. Dr. Marcus Brown, 42, emergency room physician at New England Medical Center. Divorced. Handsome in that polished, professional way that made women melt. I stared at his picture, that smug smile, the white coat, the stethoscope like a badge of honor. A man who saved lives by day and destroyed mine by night. The messages between him and Laura cut the deepest. 6 months of planning, of secrets, of promises. Can't wait to see you in Boston. Booked the presidential suite. You're incredible, Maggie. My wife never made me feel like this. My wife. My vision blurred as I read. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was an affair with commitment, with passion. And in that moment, Marcus Brown stopped being just a name on a screen. He became my enemy. I scrolled back through their thread, my hands sweating on the mouse. The Boston trip, the one she called a conference. Marcus had written, booked the presidential suite at the Marriott, can't wait to see you. And Laura, my Laura, had replied, I'll bring something special to wear, or not wear. My stomach turned. The timestamp was the same week she told me she was too busy to FaceTime with our daughter. Too tired to call me before bed, but not too tired for him. I pictured it without wanting to. The suite, the champagne, the sheets tangled with lies. Photos attached. Her in a low-cut black dress, hair perfect, eyes glowing like I hadn't seen in years. A smile that used to belong to me. Now it was his. I slammed the laptop shut, but it didn't erase the images burned into my brain. Because once you see the truth, you can't go back to pretending. I thought Marcus was the worst of it. A doctor. A man of status. But then another name surfaced in the messages. Ray. At first I assumed it was casual, maybe just a friend. Then I clicked the thread. My blood went cold. Detective Ray Johnson. Boston PD. Married. Father of 3. 20-year veteran specializing in domestic violence cases. The irony nearly made me choke. Here was a man sworn to protect families, sneaking into hotel rooms with my wife while his own kids slept at home. The texts were shorter, dirtier, rushed. Hilton, room 312, Tuesday, same time. And Laura's reply, can't wait, bring the handcuffs. My chest burned. It wasn't just one affair, not some tragic love story with Marcus. This was routine, calculated. Each new message was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. And with every nail, my anger grew sharper, more focused. Laura wasn't just cheating. She was building an empire of betrayal. By the time I finished reading, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the mouse. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to break free. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, like I was drowning in it. I stumbled back from the desk, pressing my palms against my thighs, trying to steady myself. It didn't work. The words, the images, the hotel addresses, they swirled in my head like a fever dream. 23 years of marriage, and suddenly I didn't recognize the woman sleeping upstairs. Sweat soaked through my shirt even though the house was cool. My throat was dry, my stomach twisted, my legs weak. It wasn't just anger, it was fear. Fear that my entire life had been a lie. Fear that I'd been blind for so long. And beneath that fear something darker stirred. A whisper I hadn't heard before. You can't let this go. You won't. I sat down at the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, the glow of the laptop still bleeding through the doorway. The question that clawed at me wasn't why did she do this? It was what did I do wrong? Was I too boring? Too predictable? A man who fixed engines and paid bills but forgot how to make his wife feel alive? I thought about our dinners, silent meals eaten in front of the TV, about the nights I stayed late at the office thinking I was providing, while maybe all she wanted was attention. The memories stabbed harder than the messages. Every time I failed to notice her distant eyes, every time I dismissed her excuses. Maybe I'd been blind. Maybe I'd been a fool. But then another thought rose, sharper than guilt. No, I hadn't strayed. I hadn't lied. I hadn't broken the vows. She had. I should have stopped. Closed the laptop. Walked away. But some part of me needed to know how deep the rot went. So I kept digging. Another hidden folder, another thread of messages. And there it was. Richard Hall. professor of English literature at Northeastern University. Divorced, late 50s, the kind of man who quoted poetry over wine and thought it made him irresistible. Laura had called him brilliant, told him his words made her feel seen in a way her husband never could. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Their thread was long, almost a year of dinners, late-night emails, hotel meetups disguised as study sessions. He wasn't even subtle. Receipts tied to his university card. I stared at his photo, his wire-rimmed glasses, his smug half-smile. Another man who thought he'd stolen something from me. That's when it hit me. Marcus wasn't unique. Ray wasn't unique. Laura wasn't unlucky. She was deliberate. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd reach the bottom. But betrayal has no bottom. I clicked another folder, another chain of messages, and there she was. Patricia Vance, a name I already knew. Laura's fiercest rival in court, senior partner at a competing firm, the woman she'd cursed over dinner, mocked after trials, pretended to despise. Yet here they were, tangled in messages that weren't about depositions or clients. They were about hotel rooms and power plays. Patricia wrote, "Tonight I want control. You'll do exactly what I say." And Laura's reply, "Yes, ma'am, I need it." My stomach turned. This wasn't romance. It wasn't even lust. It was conquest. Laura hadn't just crossed the line of marriage. She'd blurred every boundary. Friend, enemy, rival, it didn't matter. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, a bitter laugh caught in my throat. My wife didn't need love. She needed to win, and I was her biggest loss. I thought I'd seen it all. Doctor, cop, professor, rival attorney. Each discovery was a knife to the chest. But the last name, that one nearly finished me. Frank Rodriguez, my old boss, my mentor, the man who took me under his wing at Hartwell Industries when I was just a kid fresh out of college. He'd toasted at our wedding, hugged me at my father's funeral, called me son more times than my own dad ever did. And now, here he was in Laura's messages. 6 months of rendezvous. Lunch breaks that weren't lunches. Hotel rooms I'd driven past 100 times without knowing. Words that weren't from a colleague but from a lover. You deserve better, Laura. You deserve passion. My vision swam. My hands went numb. This wasn't just betrayal. It was treason. Marcus, Ray, Richard, Patricia, and Frank. 5 names. 5 knives. And I was bleeding out. When the last message faded from the screen, I couldn't breathe. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor like the weight of all 5 names had finally crushed me. The room spun, the walls closing in, the air too thick to swallow. 23 years of marriage reduced to chat logs, hotel receipts, and lies typed in midnight whispers. I pressed my palms against my eyes, hoping darkness would stop the images flashing in my head. Laura in Marcus's hotel suite, Laura laughing in Ray's arms, Laura whispering poetry with Richard, surrendering to Patricia, wrapped around Frank like he was family. My chest tightened, tears hot and bitter slipping down my face. This wasn't heartbreak. It was free fall. The kind of drop where you know you won't land the same man you were when you fell. For the first time, I understood. The marriage I thought I had was already dead. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, the laptop screen burning its glow into the dark. At some point, words slipped from my mouth before I even realized I was speaking. 5 men, and I was just a joke. That's what it felt like. A cruel punchline at the end of a 23-year setup. Laura had turned our marriage into her stage, and I was the fool in the audience, clapping while she disappeared with magician after magician. A doctor, a cop, a professor, a rival, my own boss. Different men, same lie. I laughed, but it wasn't laughter. It was something broken, jagged, ugly. My chest rattled, half sob, half howl. Because once you realize your life has been a comedy at your expense, what's left? The tears dried on my face. My heart slowed, steadied. And in the silence, bitterness hardened into something else. Rage. The next few days blurred together. I went through the motions like a ghost, dragging myself to work, staring at blueprints I couldn't read, driving home without remembering the turns. My body was present, but my mind was locked in a loop of images I couldn't escape. Laura's smile in hotel mirrors, Marcus's smug face, Ray's handcuffs, Richard's words, Patricia's commands, Frank's betrayal. Food had no taste. Coffee turned to ash in my mouth. Nights were worse. I'd lie in bed beside Laura, pretending to sleep, every breath she took sounding like a taunt. My chest ached constantly, as if grief itself had weight. I thought maybe it would crush me for good. Heartbreak isn't poetic. It's suffocating. It hollows you out until you wonder if there's anything left inside worth saving. And just when I thought the emptiness would swallow me whole, another voice rose from the ashes of despair. A darker voice, a dangerous one. I finally broke down and called Mike. We'd been friends since college. He'd seen me through bad grades, bad jobs, bad hangovers. If anyone could talk me off the ledge, it was him. We met at his MMA gym, the place where he turned his own anger into something disciplined. I told him everything, every name, every message, every betrayal. He wrapped my hands for the heavy bag and listened in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. When I finished, I expected him to say, "Let it go." Instead, he said something else. "Jack, don't use your fists. That'll just land you in a cell. You want revenge? Use your head. Hit them where it hurts. Their pride, their money, their reputation." I stared at him, sweat dripping down my temples, my knuckles itching for the bag. For the first time, I saw a path that wasn't just rage, it was strategy. And God help me, it sounded good. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Mike's words echoing in my head. Use your head, hit them where it hurts. But another voice fought back. Forgive her, save what's left. 23 years isn't nothing. I remembered our wedding day. Laura in white, eyes full of fire, promising forever. I remembered Emily's birth, how Laura held my hand so tightly I thought my fingers would snap. Vacations, Christmas mornings, the smell of her perfume when she kissed me goodnight. All those memories begged me to forgive. But then came the other images. The blouse in the laundry, the Marriott suite, Ray's handcuffs, Richard's poetry, Patricia's smirk, Frank's betrayal. They weren't memories. They were wounds. Forgiveness would mean pretending those wounds didn't exist. And I couldn't. Not anymore. So I asked myself, if love was gone, what was left? The answer was clear. Revenge. I tried to cling to the good times like maybe they could anchor me, pull me back from the edge. I pictured Laura in the kitchen years ago, flour on her nose as she baked cookies with Emily. I remembered the camping trip to Maine, when we all sat around the fire, laughing until our sides hurt. I even saw us slow dancing in the living room one New Year's Eve. No music, just the two of us swaying like the world had disappeared. For a moment, I almost convinced myself those memories meant something, that they could save us. But the more I replayed them, the sharper they cut. Because now I knew the truth. While I was holding on to love, Laura was collecting lovers. Every smile I recalled turned sour. Every laugh sounded false. And the pain didn't soften. It hardened. Into anger. Into resolve. If she could rewrite our past, then I would rewrite her future. By the next morning, my mind was made up. I wasn't going to scream or beg or throw plates against the wall. I wasn't going to swing fists and end up in handcuffs while Laura played the victim. No. If she wanted to play dirty, I would play smarter. Mike was right. Violence is messy, stupid, short-lived. But reputation, money, careers, those are fragile. And once they break, they don't heal. That would be my weapon. I looked around the kitchen, the wedding photos on the wall, the souvenirs from family vacations, the little notes Emily had drawn in crayon years ago. All of it suddenly felt like evidence in a trial I was losing. But not for long. For 23 years, I had been the faithful husband, the provider, the fool. Now I was something else. I was the executioner. And Laura and her lovers had no idea their sentences had already been written. Revenge isn't impulse, it's architecture. And I was an engineer. I knew how to build things piece by piece. So I started with evidence. Every message, every photo, every receipt I'd found on Laura's laptop, I printed, labeled, and sorted into folders. One for Marcus, one for Ray, one for Richard. one for Patricia, one for Frank. 5 case files, 5 lives ready to be dismantled. I bought an external drive, copied everything twice, hid 1 copy in my office, another in the garage under a box of tools. If Laura ever suspected, if she ever tried to erase her trail, it wouldn't matter. The truth was mine now, locked and loaded. I sat at my desk, staring at the neat stacks of paper and USB drives. To anyone else, it might have looked obsessive. To me, it was order, structure, justice waiting to be delivered. The plan wasn't finished yet, but the foundation was solid. And soon, I'd start building higher. I treated it like a prosecution brief. Dates, times, locations, nothing left to memory. I created a timeline on my office wall, pinning printouts and photos with colored tabs. Blue for Marcus, red for Ray, green for Richard, gold for Patricia, black for Frank. Threads of twine connected hotel reservations to calendar entries, gas charges to toll receipts, text timestamps to late nights at the office. Patterns emerged. Same Tuesdays, same hotels, same lies. I started documenting the present, not just the past. Quiet photos from a distance, screenshots of her calendars before they updated. Bank statements downloaded and filed. A spare phone became my logbook, every entry stamped and backed up in 2 places. I added one more layer, a small device tucked where she'd never notice, something that told me when her car left and where it slept. I didn't need to guess anymore. By the end of the week, the wall looked like a map of a war I hadn't declared. Until now. The next move would be mine. Collecting screenshots and receipts wasn't enough. Paper trails could be denied, twisted, buried under her lawyer tricks. What I needed now was movement, proof in real time. So one morning, while Laura was in the shower, I slipped the little black device into my pocket. A GPS tracker no bigger than a matchbox, ordered online like it was nothing more than a gadget for lost keys. Later that day, when she drove off to her client meeting, I followed. She parked at the office, walked inside, heels clicking, no sign of suspicion. As soon as she disappeared, I crouched low behind her BMW, heart hammering like I was about to commit a crime. In seconds, the magnet clicked, and the device was secure beneath the bumper. I straightened up, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and walked away like nothing happened. Now, wherever she went, I would know. Every lie had coordinates, and soon every secret would, too. That evening, I sat in my car across from the house, phone open, the tracking app glowing like a heartbeat. At 6:42 p.m., Laura's BMW pulled away, the dot moving across the map. She told me she had dinner with a client. My chest tightened. Time to see the truth. I followed at a distance, headlights low, keeping 2 cars between us. The tracker updated every few seconds, the dot leading me downtown, not toward her office, not toward a restaurant. It stopped outside New England Medical Center. My breath caught. Minutes later, I saw her walk out of the parking structure, hair perfect, makeup fresh, not a trace of exhaustion. And she wasn't alone. Dr. Marcus Brown walked beside her, hand resting low on her back like it belonged there. They laughed. They kissed. Not a peck, but the kiss of lovers. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. There it was. Confirmation. My wife wasn't mine anymore. I forced my shaking hands to steady as I reached for my phone. The zoom lens caught them clearly. Laura leaning into Marcus, his hand tracing the curve of her waist, their lips locked under the hospital's cold floodlights. Snap, snap. Each photo was a nail hammered deeper into the coffin of our marriage. When they pulled apart, laughing like teenagers, I switched to video. Marcus kissed her again, longer this time, while she brushed her fingers down his arm like she was memorizing him. I hit record, silent, hidden in the shadows of my car. By the time she climbed back into her BMW and drove away, I had everything. Photos, video, proof that no lawyer in the world could twist into innocence. Back home, I opened the folder I'd already named the evidence. 5 subfolders: Marcus, Ray, Richard, Patricia, Frank. Tonight, I dragged fresh files into Marcus's. My wife's sins now lived in high definition. Ray Johnson was next. Detective, family man, protector of the law, except when it came to mine. I tracked his routine, easy enough for a cop who thought he was untouchable. Friday night, Murphy's Pub, his usual haunt. He sat at the bar, wedding ring still on his finger, scrolling his phone with that same smirk I'd seen in his messages. I waited until he went to the restroom. Followed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the tiled room empty except for us. "Detective Johnson," I said. He froze instantly, instincts sharp. "Do I know you?" I stepped closer. "You know my wife, Laura Miller, or should I say, sophisticated lady 38. His face drained of color. I showed him a photo on my phone, him leaving the Hilton with her. "I also know your wife teaches at Brookdale Elementary. Your captain's number is in my contacts. One call, and your career, your family, gone." He swallowed hard. For the first time, the cop looked like the criminal. For a moment, neither of us moved. The sink dripped, the lights hummed, and Ray's eyes darted like a trapped animal. Then his bravado cracked. He raised his palm slightly, like I was the one holding a weapon. "Look, I don't want trouble," he muttered, voice low. "It was nothing, just a distraction. I'll end it. Tonight. You'll never hear her name from me again." I leaned in close, so he could see the fury in my eyes. "You already ended it, detective. What you do now determines whether your wife and captain find out how." His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Please, don't. I'll cut her off. I swear. No calls, no texts, nothing. It's over." I studied him for a beat, then pocketed my phone. "Good. Stay away, or the truth follows you home." He nodded, sweating, trembling. A man who wore a badge in daylight, but in that moment, stripped of power. Next was Richard Hall, the so-called intellectual, Northeastern's proud professor of literature. The man who quoted poetry to my wife while I worked overtime to keep our house standing. His messages dripped with sonnets and innuendo, as if Shakespeare himself had blessed his betrayal. I waited until evening, when the campus halls were nearly empty. His office light still burned, papers scattered, red ink bleeding over essays. I knocked once, then walked in. He looked up, startled behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "Professor Hall," I said evenly. "I'm Jack Miller, Laura's husband." His face drained of color. The pen slipped from his fingers. I don't... I dropped a folder onto his desk. Emails, photos, hotel receipts, all printed, undeniable. "You're going to write another letter tonight, a resignation, immediate. If you don't, tomorrow morning this entire file goes to the dean, the tenure board, and the student newspaper." His lips trembled. For a man of words, he suddenly had none. Richard's hands shook as he pulled his laptop closer, the screen glow turning his pale face almost ghostly. He typed with jerky fingers, glancing up at me like a schoolboy caught cheating. This will ruin me," he whispered. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You ruined yourself the night you texted my wife about the poetry of her skin. I'm just making sure the world knows." His breathing grew shallow. Finally, the printer whirred in the corner, spitting out a single page. A resignation letter, short, final. He signed it with a trembling hand, slid it across the desk. His eyes were red, his shoulders collapsed inward. A man deflated. I picked up the letter, folded it neatly into my folder, and tucked it away with the rest of his sins. "Smart choice," I said coldly. As I walked out, I glanced back once. Richard Hall, professor, poet, lover, reduced to a silent wreck staring at the ruins of his career. As I left the campus with Richard Hall's resignation letter folded neatly in my pocket, something unexpected washed over me. Not grief, not despair, power. For weeks I'd been drowning, helpless, betrayed, crushed under the weight of Laura's lies. But now, for the first time, I was the one holding the strings. Ray had crumbled in fear. Richard had signed away his career. 2 lives undone, and I hadn't thrown a single punch. I sat in my car outside the university, engine off, lights dim, staring at the city skyline. My heart didn't race with panic anymore. It beat steady, cold, deliberate. This wasn't the shaky rage of a broken man. This was control. I whispered it to myself like a vow. They thought I was weak. They thought I was blind. But now I see everything, and I decide how this ends. The power wasn't addictive yet, but I could feel it growing. Patricia Vance was different from the others. Senior partner, Laura's rival in the courtroom. Their affair wasn't about passion, it was about power. She thrived on control, and Laura had surrendered it willingly. I knew going after Patricia head-on would be suicide. She was too smart, too connected. So I aimed at the one place she was weakest, her husband, Councilman Thomas Vance. I waited until a charity gala, the kind where he shook hands and preached family values to a room full of donors. When he stepped away from the podium, I approached with a practiced smile. "Councilman, my name is Jack Miller. I think you should see this." I slipped him my phone. A photo of Patricia and Laura entering the Marriott at 8:30 p.m., the same night he'd been giving his speech on the sanctity of marriage. His smile vanished, face twisting from confusion to fury. I didn't need to say more. The image spoke for itself. Patricia was finished. It didn't take long. Within a week, Patricia's perfect world cracked wide open. The councilman stopped showing up with her at events. Reporters circled their brownstone, cameras flashing, voices shouting about infidelity and hypocrisy. Headlines screamed, "Family Values Advocate in Marriage Scandal." I watched it unfold from my living room, TV volume low, coffee steaming in my hand. Patricia's firm suspended her pending review. The councilman's campaign donors evaporated overnight, distancing themselves from the stench. And Patricia herself? She vanished from the courtroom, her once sharp name now dripping with scandal. Laura never mentioned it at home, but I caught the flicker of panic in her eyes when the story broke. She knew exactly what had happened. She just didn't know how. Another folder in the evidence wall went dark. Patricia was neutralized. And for the first time in 23 years, Laura wasn't the one holding the secrets. I was. Frank Rodriguez, my old boss, my mentor, the man who toasted at my wedding and hugged me like a father when my dad died. Out of all of them, his name cut the deepest. I didn't stalk him or lay traps. I didn't need to. With Frank, I wanted the truth straight from his mouth. I found him at his usual lunch spot, the same deli where we'd eaten together 100 times. He was alone, hunched over a newspaper, sipping black coffee. I slid into the booth across from him. He looked up, smiled. "Jack, been a while. How are you, son?" My throat tightened. Son. The word turned sour. I leaned in, voice low but steady. "How long, Frank? How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" The color drained from his face. The newspaper slipped from his hands. And in that moment, the man I'd once trusted more than blood sat frozen, caught between guilt and shame. Frank's eyes brimmed with tears before he could even form the words. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time he looked older than his 60 years. "Jack, I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. A weakness. I never meant to hurt you." His voice cracked, and a man I once saw as unshakable broke down in front of me. I stared at him across the table, the man who'd been like a second father, sobbing into his hands. Part of me wanted to believe him, to let those words soften the blade. But then I saw Laura in his messages again, saw her laugh, heard her whispers, and every ounce of sympathy turned to steel. "You didn't just hurt me, Frank," I said coldly. "You spit on everything you ever taught me. Loyalty, trust, family." He begged, tears spilling. But I didn't reach across the table. I didn't forgive. I left him there drowning in his guilt, knowing I'd already decided his fate. The last piece on my board was Marcus Brown, the polished ER physician, Laura's knight in a white coat, charming, confident, adored by patients and colleagues alike. To everyone else, he was a hero. To me, he was a parasite. I didn't confront him in a bar or corner him in an office. Men like Marcus needed something sharper than fists. They needed exposure. I gathered the photos of him and Laura at the Marriott, the messages dripping with desire, the receipts tied to his own credit card. Then I made the call. "New England Medical Center, this is Dr. Chen, Chief of Staff." I kept my voice calm. "My name is Jack Miller. I need to report unethical behavior by one of your physicians, Dr. Marcus Brown. I have proof of an ongoing affair with a married patient, photos, messages, hotel receipts." Silence on the other end, then a clipped reply. Bring everything this afternoon. Marcus didn't know it yet, but his career was already terminal. That afternoon, I sat in a sterile office across from the hospital's chief of staff. The manila folder of Marcus's sins lay open between us. Photos, printouts, receipts, each one darker than the last. Dr. Chen flipped through the pages in silence, her expression hardening by the minute. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Miller, these allegations are serious. If what you've presented is accurate, Dr. Brown has violated multiple ethical codes. We will open a formal inquiry immediately. By the time I drove home, Marcus Brown's name was already whispered through the hospital corridors. He'd been pulled from his shift mid-rounds, escorted out of the ER like a criminal in scrubs, suspended, pending investigation. His patients left in limbo, his colleagues staring in shock, his reputation bleeding out in real time. I watched the sunset from my driveway, phone buzzing with notifications. The doctor was down, another folder closed. And still, Laura had no idea I was the one pulling the strings. It started with whispers, then phone calls she couldn't explain. One evening, I found Laura pacing the bedroom, phone clutched white-knuckled. "I don't understand," she hissed into the receiver. "First Marcus gets suspended, then Richard resigns, now Ray won't answer. What the hell is happening?" She ended the call when she saw me in the doorway. Her face was pale, eyes sharp, trying to mask fear with composure. "Rough day?" I asked casually, leaning against the frame. "Just office politics," she muttered, forcing a smile. But her hands trembled when she set the phone down. At dinner, she barely touched her food. At night, she tossed and turned, muttering in her sleep. The woman who once strutted with absolute confidence now looked over her shoulder at shadows. I sat across from her, sipping my wine, hiding the grin tugging at my lips. She didn't know it yet, but the collapse wasn't random. It was orchestrated. By me. I watched her unravel like a thread pulled loose from a suit. Laura's eyes darted when her phone buzzed. Her shoulders stiffened at every unexpected call. She was a lawyer, trained to hide emotion, but the cracks were showing. And I made sure she saw me watching. Calm, unshaken. The steady husband sipping coffee, reading the paper, smiling like nothing was wrong. "You're awfully quiet tonight," she said, her fork untouched on her plate. I shrugged. "Just tired from work. You?" She forced a laugh, but it broke halfway. For a second I thought she'd ask me if I knew something, if I was behind it. But she swallowed the question. She wanted to believe I was still the fool. So I played my part. The oblivious husband. The man too simple to see what was right in front of him. Inside, though, I was smiling. Because in truth, I was the storm she couldn't name. It finally broke one night. I came home to find Laura sitting at the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands. When she looked up, mascara streaked down her cheeks, the flawless attorney mask gone. She was just a woman, cornered, terrified. "Jack, please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know what's happening. Marcus, suspended. Ray, avoiding me. Richard, resigned. Patricia, her marriage is over. Frank won't even answer my calls. It's like everything I touch is falling apart." Her shoulders trembled. "If you know something, if you're behind this, I'm begging you. Stop, please. We can fix this. I'll change. Just don't destroy me." I looked at her for a long time, letting the silence weigh heavy. Then I shook my head slowly. My voice was calm, cold, almost gentle. "It's too late for that, Laura. Actions have consequences." Her tears fell harder. But I felt nothing. Not pity, not love, only justice. I let her sob, let the silence stretch until the room felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Then I stood, pulled the thick folder from my desk, and dropped it onto the bed beside her. Papers fanned out. Photos, messages, receipts. One by one, the ghosts of her lovers staring back at her. She gasped, reaching with trembling fingers, eyes scanning the evidence. Marcus at the Marriott, Ray at the Hilton, Richard in his office, Patricia in the hotel lobby, Frank at the motel. Her voice cracked, a whisper. "Oh God." I leaned close, my words sharp as a blade. Every one of them, Laura. I destroyed them all. Your doctor? Suspended? Your detective? Finished. Your professor? Resigned in disgrace. Patricia? Her marriage is ashes. Frank? His wife knows. They're gone. Every last one. She looked at me in horror, tears streaking her face, and for the first time she understood. I wasn't her victim anymore. I was her executioner. Laura clutched the folder to her chest as if hugging it could change the truth. Her breathing came fast, uneven. She looked at me not with anger now, but with raw desperation. Jack, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can start over. I'll cut ties with everyone, I swear. Just don't end us like this. 23 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Her voice cracked, a sob breaking through. She slid off the bed, onto her knees in front of me. Tears streamed down her face, her hands clutching at mine like I was the only thing keeping her from drowning. Once, that sight would have gutted me. Once, I would have bent down, lifted her up, promised forgiveness. But not anymore. I looked into her terrified eyes and felt nothing but the steel I'd forged in fire. 23 years, I said coldly. And you burned every one of them. I pulled my phone from my pocket, swiped to the hidden folder, and let a video play for just a few seconds. Laura's eyes widened, her own voice, her own body, wrapped around Marcus in that Boston hotel room. She lunged for the phone, but I snapped it away. Enough, I said, my voice low, steady. Tomorrow morning, you're going to pack your things, you're going to call your lawyer, and you're going to file for divorce, quietly. No drama, no fight for half of what's mine. Her breath hitched. And if I don't? I held the phone up, the frozen frame of her betrayal glowing between us. Then every video in this folder goes public. The hospital board, the police department, the university, the councilman's campaign, everyone gets a copy, and the world will know who Laura Miller really is. She collapsed back onto the bed, sobbing. I turned away. My ultimatum had been delivered. The house was silent when I woke. Too silent. I rolled over, Laura's side of the bed already cold. The closet doors stood open, hangers swaying like skeletal remains. Her jewelry box was empty, drawers half shut, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. She had left like a thief sometime in the night, taking only what she could carry. No note, no goodbye, just absence. I walked downstairs, the echo of my own footsteps the only sound. The kitchen looked exactly the same, but different. No mug by the sink, no blazer draped over the chair, no phone buzzing with her fake client calls. For the first time in 23 years, the house belonged to me alone. I poured a cup of coffee, sat at the table, and stared out at the quiet street. The war I'd fought in shadows had finally emptied my home. And oddly, I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. The phone rang that afternoon. Emily. My chest lifted for a moment, thinking maybe she was checking in. Maybe she'd finally hear my side. But her voice was sharp, trembling with anger. Dad, what did you do to Mom? I froze. What did she tell you? That you've been stalking her, threatening her friends, destroying people's lives. She said you've lost your mind. Her breath hitched. Breath. Is it true? I closed my eyes, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. Emily, listen to me. Your mother hasn't been honest with you. She's been... Stop, she snapped. I don't want to hear it. She loves you, Dad. She tried to save this family while you became a monster. Her words cut deeper than any blade. I tried to speak, but the line clicked dead. My daughter, my only child, had turned her back, not because of the truth, but because of Laura's lies. That night, the house felt cavernous, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a reminder of what was gone. No footsteps upstairs, no soft hum of Laura's hairdryer, no laughter of Emily drifting down the hall. Just me, four walls, and silence thick enough to choke on. I sat at the kitchen table, the evidence folders stacked neatly in front of me, like trophies from a war no one else knew existed. I had won. Marcus suspended, Ray cornered, Richard resigned, Patricia disgraced, Frank exposed, Laura gone. I should have felt empty. But instead there was a strange satisfaction simmering beneath the loneliness. For the first time in 23 years, I wasn't the fool. I wasn't the man in the dark, blind to betrayal. I was the one who had pulled the strings and watched the mighty fall. Alone in my hollow house, I whispered to the silence, I won. And for now, that was enough. I was nursing a beer at Murphy's pub when I felt the air shift. A shadow fell across the table and I looked up into the hollowed face of Dr. Marcus Brown. His tailored suits were gone, replaced by a wrinkled jacket and tired eyes that burned with rage. He slid into the booth without asking. "You think you won, Miller?" His voice was low, venomous. "You cost me my job, my license, my family." I leaned back, calm. "You destroyed yourself, Marcus. I just held up the mirror." His lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. "Then let me return the favor. Laura's pregnant." My chest tightened. The world tilted. 3 months, he continued. "And before you ask, no, it's not yours. It's mine. We never stopped seeing each other, even after you thought you'd cut me off." He stood, straightening his jacket. "You didn't win, Miller. You just made room for me." I sat in my car outside the bar, Marcus's words replaying like a curse. "Laura's pregnant. It's mine." My hands shook as I dialed her number, the phone slick with sweat. She answered on the third ring, her voice flat, cautious. "Laura," I said, my throat tight. "Tell me it isn't true." Silence, then a soft exhale. "How did you find out?" My stomach dropped. That was an admission, not a denial. "So it's his," I pressed, my voice cracking. Another pause and then, "Yes. Marcus is the father." The words ripped through me like shrapnel. 23 years of marriage burned away in a single sentence. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. "You carried his child into the ashes of our home. You gave him the one thing you never gave me." Laura's voice trembled. "Jack, I'm sorry." Sorry. That's all she had left. And it was nothing. I hung up the phone and sat there in the dark, the dashboard lights painting my face in a sickly glow. My chest felt hollow, as if someone had scooped out my heart and left nothing but shards behind. 23 years of marriage, every holiday, every memory, reduced to rubble by one truth. The child wasn't mine. I thought I had prepared myself for betrayal. I thought the photos, the texts, the nights of surveillance had hardened me. But this was different. This was final. A baby meant permanence, a bloodline, proof carved into flesh that my wife belonged to another man. My breath came ragged, fists pounding the steering wheel until the horn blared into the night. My reflection in the windshield looked like a stranger. Red eyes, clenched jaw, lips trembling. For the first time since this war began, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even plotting. I was broken. Completely broken. The pain didn't fade. It hardened, like concrete setting in my chest. I spent nights pacing the empty house, staring at the evidence wall I had built, the strings and photos like arteries of a diseased heart. Only now, all those faces seemed smaller, less important. Because at the center of it all stood Marcus, the man who had taken my wife, the man who had taken my family, and now the man who had planted his seed where mine had never grown. I told myself revenge was over, that I'd already won, but the thought of Marcus holding that child, her child, made my vision blur with rage. Sleep became impossible, meals untouched, every moment consumed with the same thought: he hasn't suffered enough. I whispered it aloud one night, my reflection staring back from the darkened window. You stole everything from me, Marcus. Now I'll take everything from you. The obsession had taken root, and it was all I had left. I told myself it was over, that Marcus had already lost enough. But every time I pictured Laura carrying his child, the fire roared back. No, he hadn't lost nearly enough. His job was gone, but he'd found new work. His marriage had collapsed, but he still had her. And soon, he'd have a baby. That was unacceptable. I started digging again. his new employer, MedTech Solutions, a pharmaceutical company desperate to look clean while rumors of trial fraud swirled. I drafted an anonymous packet, evidence of his suspension, proof of his affair with a patient, hospital records. By the end of the week, Marcus was fired again. Then the insurance records. He had listed Laura as a dependent, though they weren't married. Fraud. I made the call. An investigation opened within days. And finally, the probation officer. A few doctored recordings, a few photos of him stumbling drunk, enough to trigger a violation. Soon Marcus wasn't just unemployed. He was an inmate. 3 days after Marcus was hauled off in cuffs, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in weeks. Laura. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. I answered. Her voice was cracked, raw. "Jack, please, I need help. Marcus is gone. The rent's overdue. I can't afford food. The baby." She choked on the word. "I don't know what to do." I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, letting her desperation fill the silence. Once I would have rushed to her side. Once I would have given her everything without question. "Have you tried your other lovers?" I asked coldly. "Oh, right. You can't. They're gone too." "Jack, I'm begging you, please, for the baby." I closed my eyes, but my voice stayed sharp as glass. "You made your bed, Laura. Lie in it. Raise his child. Live with your choices." I ended the call. For the first time, she had no one left. I couldn't stand the silence anymore, so I called Emily. My daughter's voice was tight, guarded the second she answered. "Dad, why are you calling?" I hesitated, then said it straight. "Emily, your mother is pregnant, but the child isn't mine. It's Marcus's." There was a long pause, then a sharp inhale. "So it's true. You've lost it. You're obsessed with destroying everyone around you." "No," I said firmly. "I'm telling you the truth. I have the proof. Photos, messages, hospital records, everything." Her tone cracked, half fury, half grief. "You don't get it, do you? It doesn't matter what she did. You tore this family apart. You ruined her career, her friends, her life. You're not saving anything. You're the one who destroyed us." My throat closed, but I forced words out. "Emily, I did it for you." "No, Dad," she snapped. "You did it for revenge." And then the line went dead. After Emily hung up, I sat in the darkened kitchen, phone heavy in my hand. Her words echoed. "You did it for revenge." The silence pressed in, louder than any accusation. I stared at my reflection in the black window pane, sunken eyes, clenched jaw, a face carved from stone. I didn't recognize him. The man I used to be, the husband, the father, the provider, was gone. In his place stood someone harder, colder, someone who fed on control the way others fed on love. I whispered it out loud, testing the truth of it. "I don't know who I am anymore." The words tasted foreign. Once I'd believed in forgiveness, in family, in second chances. But that man had been buried under betrayal and ash. What was left was a stranger who would never be fooled again. I pressed my palms flat on the table, feeling the grain of the wood, and I knew I couldn't turn back. Weeks passed in silence, the house an empty shell that echoed with memories I couldn't erase. I thought revenge would bring peace. I thought watching their lives collapse would somehow stitch mine back together. But all it did was hollow me out. Sitting alone at the table one night, I flipped through the folders of evidence, my trophies, my weapons, each photo, each receipt, each recorded lie. Once they felt like victories. Now they looked like gravestones. My daughter despised me. My wife was gone. The men who touched her were broken shells. And still, I felt nothing. No joy, no triumph. Just emptiness. That's when the truth hit me. I hadn't destroyed monsters. I had become one. I whispered it into the dark, voice shaking. "I am the thing I swore to fight." And the silence that answered felt heavier than any punishment. Because I finally understood, revenge doesn't heal. It only consumes. Emily sent me a photo one afternoon. A baby swaddled in blue, eyes closed, oblivious to the chaos that had birthed him. Laura's son, Marcus's blood. I stared at that tiny face, searching for some trace of myself, some echo of the 23 years I'd poured into their lives. But there was nothing. Just a stranger's child, carrying the last nail in the coffin of my marriage. I thought about all the years, the anniversaries, the road trips, the quiet mornings with coffee, and realized they'd burned away, leaving only ash. Betrayal had a price. I'd made her pay it. But revenge had a price too. And in the end, I paid with the only thing I had left, my soul. I closed the photo and whispered into the empty house. Betrayal has a cost. Revenge has a cost. And sometimes, the heaviest cost is your own soul. Now I ask you, if it were you, would you forgive or would you destroy?